Mrs. Morris and the Ghost. Chapter 3. Charlene's heart skipped a beat. Her legs trembled. She turned slowly and peered into the formal dining room. Seated at the head of the table was the man from last night. Behind the chandelier, his face glowed iridescent. She opened her mouth and screamed for all her worth, then raced through her small living room to her bedroom, where she slammed the door. Her heart hammered in her chest, and she bent over, gasping for breath. Lunging forward, she clicked the lock. This was much worse than a sinkhole or an escapee from a local asylum. Much worse. She waited. Now what was she going to do? She'd invested all her money into this place, and obviously the people in town knew the manor had a reputation. That it was haunted. Oh my God, she had inherited a ghost. That slimeball Ernie Harvey, no wonder he'd been so quick to leave. Paid a fair price, huh? Why, that weasel, she should take his toupee and flush it down the toilet. She paused, imagining holding the ugly hairpiece hostage. What were the chances she'd get her money back? Imagining her mother's "I told you so" made her failure 1,000 times worse. Mr. Harvey couldn't help her. She'd bought the place as is. Besides, he'd seemed more scared than she was. That left the police. She shouted through the bedroom door. "The cops will be here any minute!" And just what good would that do? He'd said nobody could see him but her. It would make her seem like the crazy one. Not the best way to start a new business. A chill kissed her, and she whipped around. He stood between the foot of her bed and the closet. Charlene scrambled for the bedroom door and unlocked it, desperate to get away. "Wait," the voice said again, just a little off the dial. "Don't be scared. I don't want you to be afraid. I promise I mean you no harm." Charlene held onto the door for support. She couldn't believe it. Ghosts weren't real. And yet here one was. Not flesh and blood, but not quite transparent either. Her legs slipped out from underneath her and her back hit the wall. Tears welled, and she blinked them back, at a loss for words. This was her worst nightmare. No, hearing that her husband had died in a car crash, a hit and run, had been worse. But how much more could a woman take? Charlene bowed her head, too overwrought to cry. She felt a hand at her shoulder and looked up. The cold fingers were more pliant than human flesh, light and soft. "Don't," she whispered, trying to shake it off. She closed her eyes, fighting with herself. She had to be strong, but this was too much. She couldn't take any more. Sucking back the urge to cry, she peeked out from under her lids. Where was he? Was he gone? With a snap of energy, he was back, leaning against her closet with an encouraging smile. He was tall, well over 6 feet, thin, with a full head of dark wavy hair, a longish nose, and the bluest eyes she'd ever seen. "I didn't know if I could touch you," he said. I hope to comfort you." "Don't do that." She looked into his face, extremely attractive, yes, but now that she'd studied him in the morning light, she could see that his form was sort of blurred. His voice was slightly off, and his image fuzzy. He now wore khakis and a blue button-up Oxford and leather loafers. She had to admit that in the daylight he appeared less solid and more like a ghost than a real person. He didn't seem to mean her physical harm. Did he just want to scare her and have the estate all to himself? She couldn't leave. She put her entire life savings into this place. "What do you want with me? Who are you?" She sounded breathless, even to her own ears. Her pulse raced from adrenaline. She needed a medicinal cup of coffee with a double shot of brandy. "Jack Strathmore. I told you last night what I wanted. I request your assistance in solving my murder. I think that is why I haven't moved on." "You really are a ghost, aren't you?" She had so many questions. "This is terrible." "Sorry to be the bearer of bad news." His blue eyes held hers with a hint of urgency. "I really could use your help." "Money?" "I don't need money," he said. "I don't want to be here any more than you want me to stay." His gaze pleaded with her, and her soft heart crumbled. She certainly did not like the idea that he was a ghost, but he probably wasn't too happy about it either. "I'm sorry you're dead." Charlene bit her bottom lip. If there had to be a ghost living here, oh, why couldn't it be her darling Jared? She missed him so much, had dreamed of him beside her. Jack crossed his arms, the elbows at his shirt creasing. "I had a life to live." "You can't stay," she said. "I can't leave," he countered. What was she going to do? "You said you were stuck here. What does that mean?" She eyed him closely. His clothes looked like Brooks Brothers, modern, classic, and clean. Well-dressed, expensive haircut, with a hint of silver on the sides. No supercuts for this man, ghost. He had class. He wore no watch, no wedding ring. But if he had, it would have been a Rolex, and solid gold. "Have you tried to, leave?" He walked soundlessly across the bedroom floor. "Let's go get your coffee and I'll tell you everything I know. I don't think I've been dead very long, but time is different here. I call it the Twilight Zone. You ever see those shows? I don't remember everything in chronological order. Time sometimes skips." "That sounds terrible. I hope the fact that I can see you means you're about to move on. How long do you think it's been?" "Judging by your calendar, 3 years ago." He roamed around the small room, stopping for a moment to look at the large oak tree and swing. "It's been so lonely." "The poor man." She touched her earring. "Jared, my husband, died 18 months ago. It's been unbearable, and why I moved here from Chicago." She glanced around. "Do you think he can see me now? Is it possible that he is here too?" "No, my circumstances are different. I'm sorry for your loss and your heartache," Jack said. The words settled around her, almost as if she could feel his well wishes. She walked ahead of him toward the kitchen. "Thanks. Would you like some breakfast?" He followed her into the long, narrow kitchen and waited near the far end of the breakfast nook. The kitchen had a modern look with counters a shade of butternut granite. "No, thanks. One of the pleasures I gave up, along with breathing." She slapped a hand against her forehead. "Stupid of me. Of course you can't eat or drink. Where would you put it?" Charlene spooned the fresh ground coffee into the filter. 4 tablespoons, instead of 8, as she used to when Jared was alive. "I don't feel hungry," Jack said, "but that coffee sure smells nice." "Do you have, well, not a regular body, right?" She turned slowly, embarrassed that she was wondering about the bodily functions of a ghost, which she hadn't even believed in until 30 minutes ago. "Was that rude of me? I didn't mean to pry. It's just that you've never met a ghost before." Jack took a seat at the rectangular kitchen table, crossing his legs. He seemed at home, almost like a guest or a friend. If she didn't look too closely. "That's true. So, can you see other ghosts? Or dead people? Do you talk to each other?" If so, perhaps she could communicate with her dead husband. Her hope was dashed quickly when he shook his head. "No, sorry." At least he was better than television. "Hey, was that you yesterday, turning off the TV?" His half smile made her laugh. He looked like a guilty kid after accidentally breaking a window with a baseball. The coffee brewed and her mouth watered. She needed this first cup more than she'd ever needed anything in her life. Her world was on a "you're losing your mind" tilt. If she wasn't so sure of herself, she might think she already had. But she had felt his hand. She could see him with her own eyes, hear his words. "You seem surprised that I could see you," she said, putting one pink slipper over the other. "This house is sold twice. Both times I scared away the new homeowners. I desperately wanted them to see me. I tried so hard, but failed." "I'm sorry. What did you do?" She still didn't trust him fully. What could a desperate ghost do? Nothing much. But they notice things, like you did with the lights and TV. I was only trying to make contact, but they were gone within a week. Ernie Harvey doesn't see me either, though he senses that something is off. He tapped the butternut granite counter, but it didn't make noise. Does he know it's haunted? She would have a word with that man. He told her that someone else was ready to place an offer, not that it was inhabited by a ghost. But wasn't I the one to scoop it up? Jack scowled, and his image strengthened. I don't know. He sold me and my wife this house almost 20 years ago. Do you have a big family? She could imagine his children, his happy wife, his full life, snuffed out too soon. No. He cast his gaze out the kitchen window to the green expanse of lawn, the empty bird bath, the pruned fruit trees. We talked about it. It didn't happen. Charlene touched her earring and bit back a cry. She and Jack had something beside the house in common. She cleared her throat. If you're going to be hanging around here days on end, I guess it's better that I see you than don't. Less creepy that way. And I want you to stay out of my bathroom and my bedroom, okay? That's my private space. I understand, Jack said. I will honor your request. He uncrossed his legs and leaned forward, his expression sheepish. My reflection doesn't show, he drawled. How do I look to you? I was 47 when I died. Do I look like a man or one of those scary ghosts from A Christmas Carol? You know, like that poor wretch Ebenezer Scrooge would see in his dreams? Charlene shuddered. That would have sent her over the edge. Oh no, you look nothing like that. You are a rather attractive man. Or ghost. Huh. He turned his head to the side. I'm glad to hear that. Your clothes are different this morning. Last night you were dressed up in formal wear, a white shirt, a black suit coat. Was that your funeral outfit? Can you change anytime you want? I visualize clothes from my closet, he said. I thought it improper to greet you naked. Thank you for that, Charlene laughed and added some cream before pouring her first cup of joe. She sipped on the hot, fragrant brew, holding the cup in two hands, and looked at him over the rim. So, what did you do in your past life? I was a doctor. Dr. Jonathan Benjamin Strathmore IV. Jack for short. Married, no children. Where's your wife now? She looked around the kitchen for another ghostly figure. Not here, I hope. No. He stood and leaned against the counter, very human-like. Was he doing this all for her, so that she would feel at ease? She remarried an old acquaintance soon after my demise, which I only know because she came into the house with him to get it ready to sell. His voice wavered, as did his form, growing fainter before her eyes. I was there at the funeral, where she cried on his shoulder. I tried to get out of the grave and tell her I was still in this world, but it did no good. Then things went dark, and I came to an awareness. Here. Why here? Her tummy gurgled. Eat, he said, gesturing. Have breakfast. It doesn't bother me. Food smells good, but I don't crave it. It's a nice memory. She popped an English muffin into the toaster. So, do you think that your wife and this man, how to say it delicately, were they having an affair? Since they married so quickly, I would surmise they were. His wide shoulders bowed slightly, and he tossed back a lock of hair that fell forward. His cheeks lost their color, and he looked pale as a... Why would she do that? You're very handsome, successful, and I believe kind. You bought her this amazing house. What more could a woman want? Charlene rested her back against the counter. Jack began to pace. I was kind, and a good doctor. Charlene set down her coffee. How did you die? I don't know. That time is blank for me. At some point, my wife came here to the house with a report. She left it on the counter, and I was able to read it. My death certificate stated that I had suffered a fatal stroke. Me! He shook his head with vehemence. Not likely. I was only 47 and in excellent health. Charlene felt empathy for the man who had been so vital, but she knew that it was not uncommon. Healthy people sometimes drop dead or died in car accidents. I'm sure that you saw that in your line of work. What makes you think you died from suspicious circumstances? I might have believed it if I'd gone toward the light or whatever is supposed to happen next. I was no saint, but I was a decent guy. No angels, no heavenly choir, just this. Immediately thinking of Jared, Charlene's hands trembled. He'd been a good guy. Was he in limbo somewhere? Don't go there. I was wondering if maybe the big guy didn't know about me, or maybe my time wasn't up just yet. Jack rubbed the back of his head. In all the mythology I've heard, and trust me, as a doctor, I've heard some weird stuff. The main thing to stop a person from crossing over to the light is that something is left undone. Have you thought of anything that it might be? She licked coffee from her bottom lip. Guess it would have to be pretty important, wouldn't you say? Not just forgetting your suit at the dry cleaners. He shot her a half smile. I've had a few years to ponder all this, but things are fuzzy those last couple of days. I'd built up a private practice, and Shauna owned an art gallery. We worked a lot, and our schedules didn't coincide, unless we made an effort. How lonely he sounded, even during his marriage. Charlene shoved her hair back off her face, realizing she hadn't yet brushed it, or her teeth. Well, if Jack was going to stick around, he'd have to see her at her worst, since she didn't have his knack for the quick change. Her muffin popped up, and she took it out gingerly, as it was hot to the touch, put it on a plate, and buttered it, adding a healthy dash of jam. She didn't bother to sit as she bit into it. Yum. Jack walked to the window and looked out. If she studied him too close, she could see through him in the sunshine. His body was framed by a golden glow, his aristocrat face more striking than any real man could be, like an angel sent from heaven. It's a beautiful day, he said. I love autumn, don't you? The leaves are just starting to turn but haven't fallen. It's the sense of harvest, if you've done due diligence during the year. Charlene dabbed at her mouth with the edge of a napkin, unable to imagine watching life from afar. I haven't thought about it that way. Jack, you have a wonderful home, but it is mine now. I have to make a living. Happy guests are return guests, not frightened guests, she said firmly. So, I want you to help me, Jack insisted, his body solidifying. I'm not leaving, because I can't. In a flash, he was beside her, looking animated. I was murdered. You must believe that. His deep blue eyes glittered with excitement. I will help you prove it. I will look into it, Jack, but I need something from you as well. She put her hands on her hips. Promise me you won't try to make yourself known to my guests. None of that flickering light stuff or TV. Don't so much as flutter a curtain. Got it? When he didn't answer right away, she paused in thought. Will having the house filled with strangers bother you? Where do you sleep? It isn't like that. I can't explain. There's just a period of darkness when I'm not making myself visible. He turned to face her. In the past few years, I've learned the boundaries. I don't leave the house. I can go as far as the gardens and the end of the property, but I can never get across that line. His chin jutted forward. She felt his frustration and swallowed nervously. He'd said he wouldn't hurt her, but what if he got angry? He'd scared away homebuyers and could make things fly. Was he capable of violence? Jack? She asked softly, taking one step back. Are you okay? I'm a prisoner in my own home. How okay can I be? He gave her a look of apology. I'm sorry if I frightened you again. I will try to contain my temper. This is your home now. He moved away from the window. You can see me. You know I exist. Please, help set me free. His words slayed her, and she averted her eyes, rinsing off her plate and stacking it in the dishwasher. I will try, Jack. But if the police don't think you were murdered, how am I to prove that you were? She released a sigh. I have no experience in this sort of thing. I'm a marketing major, not a detective. Then find one. She snapped her fingers. Just like that? She would do her best, but she had to take care of herself too. Her plan for a classy and historical B&B would be ruined by a ghostly presence. Sure, she was living in Salem and she could probably capitalize on it, but it was not what she had envisioned. Not by a long shot. I know this won't be easy, but maybe you can ask around and see if anybody even remembers me. He shrugged, looking downhearted. I can do that. Online even. She would pull up Google and get to work. Jack's back straightened and his jaw tensed. His body seemed to lighten. My wife's name is Shauna. She married Theo. She was quick to sell this home, a place she desperately wanted the first time she saw it. His image wavered in and out, as if he had a bad connection. Jack? I have to go, Charlene. His voice got weak and scratchy sounding, and it was hard to hear. What is her new last name? And like that, Jack's image was gone. The air held a metallic scent. Burned energy? What am I supposed to do? She asked empty air. Jack, you've got to help me here. But she could feel that Jack was gone.